All right, welcome back, everyone. February 12th. Picking things back up, 1 p.m. Vermont Arts and Culture Disaster Resilience Network. And so we're just hearing a little bit about what the organ doing. Yeah, please join us. Yeah.
Hi.
The show is yours. We're here to listen to you.
Hello, thanks for your time today. My name is Amy Cunningham. I'm the Deputy Director of the Vermont Arts Council. And today I'm here to share about the Vermont Arts and Culture Disaster and Resilience Network. Our acronym is VACDARN, which is a challenging acronym for a wonderful initiative. This is a partnership of the Vermont Arts Council and the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration, works to build the strength and resilience of Vermont's vital cultural sector. Through the network, artists and cultural organizations work together to share expertise and resources, mobilize response for mutual assistance during emergencies, and engage collectively with first responders and government emergency management agencies. We're here today as part of the Vermont Creative Network's Creative Sector Day. Vermont's creative sector, that's all the businesses, nonprofits, and individuals whose work is rooted in creativity, is a significant driver of our state's economy. In 2022, arts and culture was a $1.1 billion industry in Vermont. The creative sector strengthens communities, brings people together, and builds our economy. VACDARN was established in 2019. We offer training, support, and direct assistance. The steering team includes representation from key statewide resource groups and critical expertise in specialized cultural recovery areas. VACDARN operates as a network of networks. We're leveraging existing relationships and contact lists and coordinating communication efforts. We think this is a really strong example of interagency and cross-sector collective effort. So our steering team is led by myself from the Vermont Arts Council and our colleagues at the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration, Rachel Onop and Jane Cadwallader. We also have state steering team representation from Vermont Emergency Management, from the Vermont State Historic Preservation Office, from the Vermont Department of Libraries, the Vermont Humanities Council, the Vermont Historical Society. We have a National Heritage Responder paper conservator, Carolyn Friesa, who's based in Bellows Falls. We have an archivist from Middlebury College Libraries. We have a representative from the Smithsonian Cultural Rescue Initiative, and a representative from the School of the Arts at the University of Vermont. After the historic flooding in 2023 and again in 2024, the VACDARN steering team activated to deploy assistance to artists and to cultural organizations, providing immediate expertise for conservation needs, for impacted cultural heritage materials, for helping them navigate and supporting them through the FEMA process, and connecting the sector with Vermont's emergency management response. So some of our work more specifically included activating the steering team using our collective networks to catalog damage and needs across the state. We deployed national heritage responders and other conservators to sites with damaged collections for salvage and stabilization work. And we raised private funds to actually help support the treatment costs of some of those collections. We served as the de facto historical and cultural restoration task force, which is a required committee for the state's long-term recovery planning efforts. We provided outreach to flood impacted individuals and organizations in the creative sector to help them know what kind of state and federal resources were available, including offering a webinar for cultural organizations with FEMA representatives. We coordinated with the Smithsonian Cultural Rescue Initiative to offer workshops about saving family treasures after flood. And we coordinated funding needs among partners to avoid duplication of effort. And that included serving as advisors to the Vermont Community Foundation for their flood grants around funding needs within the creative sector. Our recent work includes a statewide day of learning last September in Barre, which provided practical tips and training, resilience and relationship building for nearly 100 artists, cultural workers, librarians, emergency managers, and others. We have a recap of that day and recordings of all those trainings on the website. We conducted a Culture for Climate Action series in partnership with UMass Amherst Arts Extension Service which provided trainings on climate resilience for over 20 of Vermont's cultural organizations. Looking forward towards long-term recovery efforts, our team is focused on continued support and strengthening of the network, including improving our contact lists and asset mapping, continued emphasis on preparedness, trainings and support to create emergency plans and continuity of operations plans. We're also interested in the ways that our cultural infrastructure can be assets in preparing for future emergencies. So for example, how could we make sure that the town library and performing arts space is connected with local emergency management planning to enable them to provide actual support? So it's not just about making sure the library's collections are preserved, but how can the library be prepared to be a center in the instance of the next emergency? And we're advocating funding for arts and cultural initiatives that promote collective healing and recovery in communities around the state. In aftermath of the floods, we were able to work with and help fund a number of artists and cultural organizations who did kind of long-term recovery work with citizens in their communities. Our many cultural assets, from painters and performers to theaters and historic sites, are vital in making Vermont a place where people want to visit, live, and stay. The arts also serve as a helpful tool for rebuilding community fabric and processing collective grief after traumatic events. Vacdarn is committed to helping these cultural assets weather the next storm so that they can continue to serve their communities. That's what Vacdarn's all about.
So, I mean, obviously, as we all know, we've been working on policy development for a couple of years now in the aftermath of the floods, also like COVID response, and getting the state more prepared for the inevitable incidents, whether they be, human caused or natural. So we plan on working on bills. We're still waiting for bills to come in, but we have the intent on taking some of those up. So I guess sort of my question is like, for your boots on the ground perspective, like what can we do better as a policy development committee to help prepare your organization?
That's a great question. I would say that wherever there's an opening to ensure that Vermont Emergency Management and those kind of and the local emergency managers, whatever, that the policies are in place to encourage them to make sure that they're connecting with the assets on the ground in the community. And I think, again, back to my point around the opportunities, we've got physical infrastructure. The cultural sector represents like significant cultural infrastructure, physical infrastructure in our downtowns. And, we could be trained and deployed and be a part of the local emergency plans. And I think folks are open to that, of course. It's just a matter of kind of connecting those dots and helping. I mean, I think we're all aware we're in a really small state, and sometimes it's confounding how we still have silos, even in small, even in the cultural sector, between the libraries and the historical folks and the arts folks. Like there's just part of our work around the Creative Network is just really making sure we're all on the same page and communicating together. So I think finding those opportunities to really connect with community organizations. And I would say, and I recognize I'm here with Emma from Common Good Vermont, I would say that the nonprofit sector as a whole, not just cultural organizations, but the ways that the nonprofit sector can really be a part, include us in the planning.
That's perfect, because especially with something where you're representing folks in the arts community that are primarily centralized in the downtowns, village centers, denser areas, right? And I recall, I'll call it flood one, that here in the capital especially, there was such just the Vermonters wanting to help Vermonters. There was such like an inflow of people with a desire to help, that there was almost a point where there were too many people trying to help and nobody knew how to organize them and actually put them into a place that was impactful. And there were some instances where they were actually, there was just too many bodies trying to help with no clean guidance to what they should be doing for that moment in time, right?
I think that's a crucial point. Sorry, I didn't mean
No. And I just try to I'm making this a little bit more conversational here. So that is something that's always stuck out in my head, where how can we get organizations, and now we're having this conversation, so is that sort of like where your head's at?
I think in the, yeah,
Organize folks so they understand a role when it happens, because we're not at if it happens anymore, we're at when it happens.
I think that is, gets exactly at the heart of why there's a VACDARN steering team and why we've got folks from Department of Libraries and from Historic Preservation and from the Historical Society, from the Arts Council. I would say a lot of what we've learned through these series of flooding events is that the most important thing that the VACDARN team can do is make sure all of our colleagues take a beat, take a breath. We are not first responders. Let's all wait and let's have one coordinated communication. Let's not, let's not send out 20 different, here's how you can help emails. Let's not all do our own outreach to historical societies and art galleries. And let's do one effort. And that, I mean, I think when I talk about it being an impactful interagency initiative, that's really what it's about, is like, we're gonna do this together, which avoids, I mean, people who've impacted in natural disasters are just overwhelmed with the amount of information. I mean, you know this better than I
guess
do.
it's kind of like the action to the reaction, right?
Exactly.
People want to react, but we need to have an organized
That's
action.
not the best thing to
The
do.
reaction gets in the way of the action.
That's right. And as important as cultural assets are, life is more important. And we are not first responders. I mean, and that's kind of the orientation to our steering team is like, we are not first responders. Let them do that work, and then we're ready for that also important second wave of recovery and salvage of buildings and cultural assets, and helping artists. We were able to deploy a lot of direct funding really quickly to help artists whose studios were wrecked, whose equipment was wrecked. So that's a really important piece too.
I know, I know that there's a couple of bills that are really close to being introduced right now. So we're hoping to have some subject matter, some relevant bills, so we can start moving this stuff soon. So
terrific. I'd be happy to come back at any time. And I'd also just mention my colleague, Rachel Onoff, who's the head of, at the Vermont State Archives, who's the head of the Vermont Historical Records Program, has really extensive expertise in records management and collection salvage and
some of the basements in the municipal buildings, like, I mean, I have a friend who works here, and what they had happen to their
she was
records.
Very involved in a lot of that work around the state. So you've got some great experts over there at the State Archive when it comes time to start weighing in on some of those policies that impact that work.
Understood. Representative Boyden.
Yeah, we took a field trip to the State Archives 2 years ago, and that was just so impressive. The wall, or the floor to ceiling walls of all of the boxes of records.
They do it, like, people don't realize it exists, right?
Yeah.
They do an amazing job, like, maintaining historic documents, but also like the documents of record for various purposes and causes. They do marvelous work in that.
Yeah.
We should probably do a field trip. It's
It
close.
was fun.
Yeah. So, any other questions for our guest?
Thanks for having me.
No, wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the tee up on this, and like, we have
Yeah.
every intention of picking up some of that work once we have a relevant bill on the wall.
Terrific. We've got a reception at 3:00 in the Cedar Creek room that includes circus artists. So
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
maybe we'll see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're butting up on one of our gaps here that we didn't fill anything into. So we are going to reconvene at 1:45 with Representative Labor, and we are having some Congress. Oh, this is where I got a little turned around yesterday. We're doing the some of the veterans relevant introductions. So that is the bucket of bill intros later today. Time out for 25 minutes. Autumn.